Most people think they only have two options when it comes to AI. You either use ChatGPT or you use something like it. Gemini, Claude, Copilot. I mean, look, pick your flavor of the same thing. But that's not actually true. So today I want to introduce you to a whole other world that most people, even like people who follow AI closely, don't even know exists, or they just like don't talk about it. It's called local AI or offline AI. I don't know. I've heard it like called both ways. And it, in my opinion, changes the conversation entirely. Not just like for privacy reasons, like obviously that's like really important, but because most of it is like free, like most of it just runs right on your device. And there are, I think, like over 20,000 open source AI models out there, like right now, that most people, I guess, never heard of. Because every time I'm talking about this to like friends or colleagues and stuff like that, they're just like, what are you talking about, Shay? And that's why I was like, let me just make this quick voice note explaining it. And hopefully by the end of this voice note, you're going to have a completely different picture of what your options are. I'm actually working on a really interesting essay, basically arguing for the need of more options when it comes to AI, which I think in the long run is good for everybody. But enough about that essay. Let me start at the beginning, because I think a lot of the confusion around AI and privacy comes from people not fully understanding what happens when they type something into ChatGPT. Okay, so when you open ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or any other major like AI tool and you type a question, that message doesn't stay on your computer. It travels, like it leaves your device, goes across the internet, lands on a server somewhere, usually actually in a massive data center, the kind with like rows and rows of specialized hardware called GPUs, which, you've probably heard a lot in the news. And then the AI processes your message there and sends the response back to you. So this whole round trip happens in seconds, which is why it feels like absolutely instant. But your message did travel, your data did leave your device, and for a lot of people that matters, right? Now I want to be clear. This is just like how the internet works. Like, I don't want people to like get freaked out. So think about every time you check Instagram, your feed, your messages, the photos you upload, all of that is being stored and processed on servers that Instagram and Meta own. Google Docs works the same way. Gmail works the same way. Your iCloud backup on your phones or wherever works the same way. We are so deep into a cloud-based internet that most of us like stopped questioning it a long time ago. So AI is just the newest addition to that infrastructure. And the same questions we probably should have been asking about social media data, who has it, what they do with it, who can request it, apply here too. But here's where AI gets a little more sensitive, because the things people type into AI tools aren't always casual, right? Like people use these tools to process medical questions, legal situations, business strategies, therapy adjacent conversations, personal doubts they haven't said out loud to anyone. Like that's a completely different category of data than what you liked on Instagram last Thursday, right? So the question isn't whether cloud AI is like, the bane of our existence. The question is whether, like, for certain tasks, you'd rather that data, like, never leave your device at all. And that's exactly what local AI makes possible. Okay, so here's the part that surprised me when I started digging into this, because honestly, like the alternative isn't some complicated developer tool that requires a computer science degree, right? Like some of these options are like as simple as downloading an app, and then yeah, that's it, like it's on your phone or your laptop. But let me actually like break down what local AI actually is. So local AI just means that the model runs on your device, like your laptop, your phone, your iPad. The processing that I described earlier, it just happens locally, like on your own hardware, and nothing gets sent to a data center. So think about that difference. So with cloud AI, the work happens somewhere else and the results comes back to you, right? And then with local AI, the work happens right where you are, like using your device's processing power. Right. So there's a technical word I want to introduce here because it comes up constantly in this space and it's actually like pretty simple, like once you understand it. And it's called inference, right? In the context of AI, because I know a lot of people are like, I know what inference means. In the context of AI, inference is just what happens when the AI produces a response. So you give it a prompt, it analyzes it, it generates an answer. That process is called inference. So when you use ChatGPT, inference is happening on OpenAI's servers. Okay. So when you use local AI, inference is happening on your computer. Hopefully that makes sense. So why does that matter? Inference requires computing power, and the more powerful the model, the more power it needs, right? So, like a data center is full of GPUs that can run very, very large, capable models extremely fast, right? So, your laptop can also run a model, but it has to be much smaller, obviously, and much more efficient for your hardware. And, you know, obviously, it might be a little bit slower doing what a very big, capable model can do, but it can absolutely do it, and especially if you have a modern machine. So, for example, I have an M4 MacBook with 16 gigabytes of unified memory, which is like essentially how much the system can handle processing at one time. And I have quite a bit of storage. So, that kind of hardware handles local AI really well. So, if you have an older machine or like less memory, it's still possible, but you just have to use like much smaller models. But essentially, like the trade off is very real, but it's manageable. Is what I'm trying to say. So like responses might be a little slower. You know, you can't run the very largest model out there. Okay. And unlike cloud based tools that sync your chat history across every device you own, local AI keeps everything on one machine. So there's no automatic syncing. But, for a huge portion of everyday tasks, I mean, like you don't need GPT-4 level power, right? You just don't. Like the average person doesn't, okay? Because I know there's a lot of researchers and like founders and tech heavy people that, listen to this. I'm saying for the average person. And we'll get into why in a second. Okay, so now you know what local AI is and roughly what it costs you to use it. But before I get into the specific tools, I want to make one point that I think might reframe this entire conversation. So there is a platform called Featherless AI, and what they've done is catalog over 26,000 open source large language models, or technically just language models, because most of them are like not large. But AI models, let me just simplify it for you guys. So these models were built by researchers, companies, universities, independent developers. Shout out to the open source community, and especially independent developers all over the world. And it's all open source, all publicly available. Now, Featherless itself is a cloud service. So your data does travel to their servers. So it's not the same thing as running AI locally. Okay, I just want to be, very clear about that distinction. And I'm happy to talk about that distinction in a future episode, because I think it opens up a completely different conversation. But the reason I'm mentioning the number is this. When people say AI, they almost always mean two or three of the most famous products that we know out there: ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. But what I'm telling you here is that that is just a tiny sliver of what's actually out there. Okay, so most people don't need frontier AI for their like daily minute tasks. Like you just don't need the most powerful model in the world to, draft an email, to summarize a document, help you think through a problem, answer a question. Like really, like smaller, efficient, open source models can do that just fine. And many of them can run on your device, like right now, for free. And that's the shift I want to make sure that you have in your head as we're like going through all this. Okay, so quick pause. If this is already changing how you think about AI, please subscribe. Because I'm thinking about like turning this into a series. But I just don't know if you guys would be like interested in it. And if you're already using like any local AI tools, like drop a comment so others can see it. And I also just genuinely want to know what your setup looks like because everyone has their own setup. Okay, so let's get practical. I want to give you a few actual tools that you can look into. For some, it might be familiar. For others, this might be the first time you ever hear this. Okay. The most direct comparison to ChatGPT in the local AI world is Jan. Jan is free, open source, and runs 100% offline on your computer. Mac, Windows, Linux, like it works across all of them. You download it, you pick a model from their built in hub, models like Llama from Meta, Mistral, Gemma from Google, DeepSeek, like, just choose your model and you just start chatting. No account, no subscription, no data leaving your device. I think the interface is like actually pretty clean. It's designed for regular people, not just developers. And because it's built on open infrastructure, it's completely transparent. So anyone can look at the code and like verify exactly what it's doing. There are no hidden backdoors, no data collection baked in. The privacy guarantee isn't like a policy. You just have to like fingers crossed. Hopefully they're telling the truth. Like it's structural. Like the data literally has nowhere to go. Like it cannot leave your device. For Apple device users specifically, like if you have an iPhone, iPad, Mac, this one I just started using recently. The app is called Locally AI. It's specifically optimized for Apple Silicon, which means it takes advantage of like that specific chip architecture that makes modern Macs and iPhones so fast and efficient. So the same principle, right? Models run locally, fully offline on your iPhone and your, Apple Silicon device. Like no login required. Your data stays on your device. It also has voice mode that processes entirely on your device, which is like honestly genuinely impressive because I'm a voice first girly. I prefer to have like voice first interactions because my mind sometimes moves too quickly for writing and typing. Now, an important note. Locally AI is Apple only. Once again, because it's optimized specifically for the chips that are in Apple devices. If you're on Android or Windows, Jan is going to be your go-to. Okay, so for local project management, I've moved most of my personal project management and note taking to Obsidian. I've heard about Obsidian forever, but Obsidian is a note taking and knowledge management tool. Everything is saved locally on your device as like plain text files. It just has a really nice UI for you to be able to work with it. Nothing goes to the cloud unless you specifically pay for their like sync feature, which is completely optional. Your notes, your thinking, your research, it all lives on your machine. For anyone doing deep intellectual work, like researchers, writers, people who think in systems, Obsidian is exceptional once you understand how it works. Like the learning curve is real. I'm going to be so honest about that. That's why I'm like, I've heard about Obsidian for like years, but it took me a while to get comfortable with it. And part of that is because the plugin ecosystem is enormous. There are hundreds of community built plugins that let you customize Obsidian for almost like any workflow. So, databases, calendar, task management, daily journaling, you name it. Like, that's also like, what makes it overwhelming at first because you open it and there's so much you could do with it. It's like a blank slate and it's hard to know where to start. So, my advice is start with the basics: notes, links between notes, and folders. Don't touch the plugins until you know what problem you're trying to solve. Once I did that, like everything clicked and it worked out. So just want to be very transparent about that. For my personal intellectual work, my research, my thinking, my private notes, Obsidian is where it lives. For anything that I need to share with collaborators or teammates, I still use Notion. But for the things I don't want on anyone else's servers, or like, to have my data out there, especially for things that are still in the works, yeah, I just use Obsidian. Okay, so if you're someone who takes a lot of notes, or does research heavy work, drop the word obsidian in the comments. If you want me to do a full episode on how I actually use it, that could just be like its own um thing because it's a bit complicated and I don't have 7 hours to explain to you. Oh, well, it's not going to take 7 hours, but you know what I mean. Okay, so another huge disclaimer because I think it matters. Local AI is not for everyone in every situation. That's why I gave the perfect example of like most of my personal notes are on Obsidian, but I still use Notion for like my companies and things of that sort, right? If you need the most capable model available, the most up to date information, seamless syncing across your phone and laptop. Cloud AI is going to serve you better, and that's fine. And that's a real need. And local AI makes a lot of sense if you work with sensitive information, legal documents, patient data, like proprietary business strategy, like research that isn't published yet. Anything where you'd rather the AI not see it. You basically want a free tool that doesn't require a subscription. Like Jan is free, Locally AI is free, Obsidian is free. Like these aren't budget compromises, they're legitimate well built tools. And I'm also conscious of the fact that there's a wide range of people that listen and engage with my content. So, like, maybe you're privacy conscious as a matter of principle. So, even if nothing you're doing is especially sensitive, you might just not want your thinking cataloged somewhere. That is a completely valid reason. Or you're probably like simply curious. That's how I started out, right? Like you're the kind of person who wants to understand what's out there beyond the 2 or 3 apps everyone's talking about. Like that curiosity is worth following. So I feel like the average person doing everyday tasks doesn't really need the full available power of a frontier model running on a data center. Um, Obviously, yes, I know there's so many researchers and developers and software engineers and stuff like that. Like, I'm not talking to you guys. I'm talking to the average regular person who is probably not like super tech savvy or probably doesn't really need AI for like a bunch of stuff like that's who I'm talking about before you'll start commenting. Like a smaller model running on your own machine can pretty much handle like the small minute tasks. And the fact that most people don't know that is probably like, I don't know, like a marketing problem or partly like a media coverage problem. Because obviously like the big names get all the attention. But the open ecosystem largely doesn't get as much, attention. Okay, so here's where we are. You know that Cloud AI and ChatGPT are not the same thing as AI. They're specific products in a much larger landscape. You know what local AI is, roughly what it costs you in terms of like speed and capability. And you have a few concrete tools you can look into. But honestly, like I've barely scratched the surface because there's a whole other conversation we haven't had yet about AI that still uses the cloud but isn't owned by OpenAI or Google or Microsoft, like any of the big tech. Open source models running on shared infrastructure, right, with different privacy policies, different governance structures, different values, and the question of whether that actually changes anything meaningfully. Or whether it's just like a different flavor of the same problem, right? I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I promised myself I would not go too much off script. And I would actually be really happy to do an episode on that. Just like comment below. And sometimes when I'm making these voice notes, I'm like talking as if you guys are in the room. So like I need that feedback loop. Like, when professors are like, nod and like, shake your hand. Let me, know that you're like listening or understanding. Cause I'm super busy these days. So I don't have as much time as I once had to make content. So I just want to make sure that I'm being as helpful to you all as I possibly can. So here is what I'm asking. If you want to go deeper on this specific topic, if you want me to do a full episode on open source cloud AI, what it looks like, who controls it, whether it's actually more trustworthy, just comment part two below, just so I can save you guys some time. Yeah, just comment part two. And if enough of you want it, like, look, I'll do it. Because at the end of the day, this show goes where you need it to go. I don't want to just sit here and deliver a curriculum. I'm here to think through the things that actually matter with you all. So if this episode was helpful or useful, just share it with someone who's been asking questions about AI and privacy. They don't need like a technical background to follow it. Hopefully, everything I've said makes sense. If you have questions, like comment below and subscribe if you haven't. And I'll, talk to you in the next episode.